Chapter 676, Enlightenment. Deng Shentong vaguely sensed that something was wrong. I can't lose. How could I lose? With my abilities, what kind of petty tricks could he use to compete with me? It must be because... While Deng Shentong was struggling, Feng Wangyuan had already rushed over. The power of the phoenix burned all around him, and the power of the flames interacted with the flames on Deng Shentong's body, causing him even more pain. Ha ha! Come on, Captain of the Heavenly Squad. Let's see who can last the longest. But I'll give you a heads up, I can't be killed. This time, it was Feng Wangyuan's turn to torment Deng Shentong. Deng Shentong laboriously used the power of the Holy Body's blessing to counter the burning of the phoenix flames. At the same time, he had to keep his hands free to deal with Feng Wangyuan. The battlefield was surrounded by flames, and the roars of anger continued. Even though he was being burned by the phoenix fire, Deng Shentong was still Deng Shentong after all. When he fought back with all his strength, Feng Wangyuan found it difficult to defend. However, Feng Wangyuan's fighting style was very clear, he was fighting for his life. Until Deng Shentong found a way to restrain Phoenix Hall's ability, if they continued fighting like this, Phoenix Hall would sooner or later be able to wear Deng Shentong down. However, Deng Shentong no longer had the time or energy to deal with it. The phoenix blood that covered his body was burning with such intense heat that it made him want to die almost immediately. But he knew that he could not just give up. He fought with all his strength, and surprisingly, he managed to kill Feng Wangyuan 3 more times. However, no matter how many times he killed the guy, he would just get back up from the flames and continue to fight Deng Shentong with a mocking smile. Despair, unparalleled despair, engulfed Deng Shentong. Even if his alien energy was even more powerful, it was impossible to fight endlessly. Am I really going to collapse here? A blood-red flame engulfed Deng Shentong, and the silver holy light on his body grew weaker and weaker. At this point, he had to admit one thing, he could no longer continue fighting. But on the brink of life and death, there was one thing he did figure out. That was why he would lose in this battle. It wasn't because he wasn't strong enough, but because... Puff! Phoenix Hall delivered a niche strike that directly hit Deng Shentong's chest. Although he was protected by his battle armor, he still flew backwards dozens of meters and fell directly into the ruins. At this time, blood was gushing from his mouth, and he could barely lift his eyelids. In the corner of his eye, he saw Feng Wangyuan walking towards him with a demonic grin, naked. Ah, I get it, I finally know what's going on. It turns out that from the beginning, I was the one they were after. Blood sputtered from Deng Shentong's mouth, and he no longer had the strength to stand up. But... at least I have to take the information back, he thought weakly. Phoenix Hall walked up to him and looked down on him in a condescending manner as a victor. Drip, drip. Deng Shentong closed his eyes, and a faint light flashed in his silver long hair. Just as Feng Wangyuan was about to reach out and take his head, Deng Shentong's head exploded with a loud bang. An extremely terrifying force swept out, directly dispersing the fog for thousands of meters in all directions. The dense fog rolled back out, its power so strong that Feng Wangyuan, who had been at the center of the explosion, was killed once again. A silver storm erupted from the center of Jiangning Square, like a silver ball quickly enveloping a side of the sky, dazzlingly bright. However, this dazzling and magnificent light caused the Blizzard City's Combat Command Center to become deathly silent. They understood what this explosion meant. Each captain-level alien had a small high-energy bomb placed on their head. It was jointly developed by the Deng Group and the Blizzard City Research Center, and was extremely powerful. However, its purpose was not to kill the enemy, but to explode. The power of the captain-level aliens is too strong, so when they die, their origin must be ensured not to be swallowed by the enemy. Therefore, the appearance of that huge silvery white light ball means that a captain-level alien has fallen. The only captain-level alien that appeared there was Deng Shentong. In other words, Deng Shentong is dead. The Combat Command Center fell silent, and the staff even forgot their work. Several girls even fainted where they stood due to their inability to accept the truth. Deng Shentong's death marked the complete failure of Blizzard City in this battle against Eclipse Moon. Lan Xincheng's eyes widened, his slender body began to tremble, and his eyes were full of dullness. Tu Yunlia's face, buried deep in his collar, was stern, his gaze sharp and full of anger. As for Bai Li Changqing, he opened his mouth wide, not knowing what to say. None of them could imagine that the Jiangnan region would lose in this battle. Amidst their shock, none of these people could help but secretly cast their eyes towards the old man on the podium. Zhu Jing was propping himself up with both hands, his body trembling and his strong shoulders twitching. Although he was keeping his head down, everyone knew that his expression at this moment must be terrifying. Yes, he didn't want his subordinates to see his hideous appearance. His face was already so distorted that it was frightening, his eyes were bloodshot, and even his mouth was bleeding from clenching his teeth too hard. The knuckles of his hands had turned white from the excessive force, and his fingertips were scratching the table, with his fingernails about to turn over. Inside, Zhu Jing was on the verge of collapse. One of his elite teams had died in battle against a group of Ronin. More than half of the people under the captain, including the captain himself, had died in battle, while the other side was still rampaging across the land. This incident would become the biggest stain in his military career, one that would be difficult to wash away. General Zhu. Lan Xincheng looked at Zhu Jing with some concern. He knew very well how much this incident had hit Zhu Jing. Zhu Jing lowered his head and said, word by word, immediately order all troops to withdraw. Immediately withdraw. His voice sounded as if it was being squeezed through the crack of a door as he spoke, and he was gasping heavily. If he weren't in front of so many people, he was afraid that he might have lost his temper at this point. However, he couldn't do that yet, because the battle wasn't completely over. He had to preserve what strength he had. No matter how painful a defeat was, as the commander-in-chief, he couldn't afford to lose his will. Tu Yunlai said, Roger. He immediately ordered the 2 helicopters that were stationed there to return immediately. Once Tu Yunlai had finished giving his orders, Zhu Jing could no longer control his anger. He tilted his neck back and smashed his fist down on the command platform. Prepare the Reaper of Love. Raise the entire city of Jiangning and bury those bastards once and for all. Everyone was shocked. The Reaper of Love, their ultimate weapon, was really going to be used? Once, when the eclipse had just appeared, someone mentioned using the Love Death to wipe them out directly. But this proposal was rejected by Zhu Jing. However, now, Zhu Jing, who was outraged, still chose this approach. Because he himself realized that in the current Jiangnan region, if even the Heavenly God Squad could not destroy the eclipse, the only way to minimize the damage was to use the Love Death. Otherwise, even if troops are sent to suppress it, the price will be incredibly heavy. Chapter 677 Tragic. On the workbench side, after receiving Zhu Jing's order, someone immediately began to work on opening the launch chamber where the Grim Reaper of Love was stored. Everyone in the command center was on tenterhooks. Although they had expected this day to come, this was still the first time such a weapon had been used in the country's history. This also officially marked the end of the influence of thermal weapons on the world before the end of the world. Instead, it was the ability of the top aliens to dominate. In the words Erosion Moon also cast a shadow over everyone's hearts. Jiangning Square Center. Phoenix Hallren walked out of the thick fog completely naked. He looked a bit weak. Although he could keep resurrecting, each resurrection required a great deal of energy. He was not truly immortal, but no one knew his limits. The body of Deng Shentong could no longer be found. The high-powered bomb had blown his body to pieces, and a terrifying crater had appeared in the ground. To ensure that the origin of a captain-level figure could be completely destroyed, the power of such a bomb was also terrifying. Incidentally, it had become a means of mutual destruction. In the end, I'm still the one who wins, you bastard. He had won too hard. If he had not known in advance about Deng Shentong's abilities and been prepared, he would probably really have died at Deng Shentong's hands this time. The investigation team leaders of Blizzard City are indeed monsters. Deng Shentong took a deep breath, and his body surface exuded a red, blazing wave of heat, helping him withstand the extremely cold temperature. In the distance, Mayumi Takeuchi, who had been kneeling on the ground divining, suddenly covered her mouth and coughed violently. "Miss Takeuchi." Shijimanojo Satoru hurriedly supported her body. A few streaks of bright red blood flowed out between her fingers, and Mayumi Takeuchi's face grew increasingly pale. At this time, even her skin began to become somewhat transparent, almost like a patient suffering from excessive blood loss. An entire arm had turned purple due to continuous blood loss and the invasion of cold poison, and it had already become useless. Blood kept spilling from Mayumi Takeuchi's mouth. 40 Manabusa suddenly thought of something. "You must have overdrawn your blood because you helped the captain fight, right?" Mayumi Takeuchi struggled to release her hand and said to 40 Manabusa, "Hurry, tell everyone to leave here immediately. We have to leave right away. There is a very big danger coming." Seeing Mayumi Takeuchi's anxious expression, Shogo Shijimata suddenly understood something. He closed his eyes and began contacting all the living members of Eclipse Moon. He told them to hurry and gather, and to get out of there. Jin Hoen arrived as soon as he could. He found some clothes in the ruins and put them on, barely covering his naked body, though they couldn't keep out the cold. After listening to the words of Shijimono Jengo, he said without hesitation, "It seems that the other party is going to use a weapon of mass destruction to wash the ground. Leave here immediately." The members of Eclipse Moon who had received the signal from Shijimono Jengo immediately began to head back. After gathering together, they discovered that they had lost 5 people in this battle, which was truly tragic. This result was unexpected by everyone. In the past, as long as they followed Mayumi Takeuchi's predictions, no one had ever died. But this time, they had lost nearly half of their team. The group was filled with doubts, but since Mayumi Takeuchi was currently unconscious, they had no way to ask her. They could only follow her predictions and leave this place as soon as possible. Shijimanojo Satoru went to find the car, and then all the team members got into the car and left Jiangning Square without a moment's rest. As they were leaving, they heard the sound of helicopter blades whirling in the distance. Phoenixine couldn't help but look up at the sky. He had a hunch that these guys, he would meet again soon. What a tragic battle. So many people died, we can't continue fighting anymore. Team leader, what are we going to do now? Are we going to continue moving forward? Shinguji Saikiro looked at Phoenixine and asked. With one arm resting on the car window, Jean Phoenix Court looked at Mayumi Takeuchi. She had overdrawn her strength in the battle and even lost the use of her arm. They needed to find a healing alien to heal her. Mayumi Takeuchi was the core of Eclipse Moon and must not be lost. No, we also need to take a break for a while. But this time, we are the winners. Although Hoen Jin looked a little haggard at the moment, his eyes were still filled with a fanatical light. Blizzard City has taken a big enough blow this time. They don't have any troops they can use against us either. And next time, I'm going to give them an even bigger surprise. Shinguji Saikiro couldn't help but glance at him sideways, his eyes full of the same old disgust. Oh? What are you going to do now? We don't have any help. We will. He gave a mysterious smile, and his laughter grew louder and louder in the snowfield, carried away by the wind. The gunship took off with a rumble rumble rumble, and the blades sent up a cloud of snow. Zhang Yi sensed that they were going to retreat, and couldn't help but frown. This was very abnormal. Everyone had witnessed the explosion, and even the helicopter in the distance had shaken. And soon, they were going to retreat. This didn't seem like a victory. Could it be that Deng Shentong had lost? Zhang Yi's scalp tingled a little. He couldn't imagine Jiangnan region losing twice to Eclipse Moon. And this time, even with the deployment of their trump card unit. He could even anticipate Zhu Zheng's fury and madness. But what about Deng Shentong? Was he dead? Zhang Yi frowned. All of this was just speculation on his part, but everything that was happening in front of his eyes gave him a bad feeling. A character like Deng Shentong, if he really died so easily, it just didn't feel real. Zhang Yi looked at the medical staff inside the helicopter and immediately dismissed the idea of asking them. These people were just junior staff and should not know the situation at headquarters. Several other people also sensed the subtle atmosphere. If they had won, they would not have had to leave in such a hurry. But they didn't even want to think about failure. No one could bear such a price. Liang Yu saw Zhang Yi's strange expression and couldn't help but come over and ask in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Zhang Yi shook his head and said, "Nothing, let's just wait quietly until we get back to the city." It was best not to speculate or discuss the situation when it was unclear. Seeing this, Liang Yu didn't say anything more. She took the small, fluffy Hua Hua in her arms and stroked it. However, Hua Hua didn't seem to like her very much. After rubbing against her hands a few times, it raised its tail, jumped to the ground, and climbed up Zhang Yi's trouser leg. Cats were warm-loving creatures, so they preferred the body temperature of males. Once it was on Zhang Yi's lap, it found a comfortable position, scratched the trouser leg a little, then curled up into a ball and continued to sleep soundly.